the administration is telling Harvard it cannot admit foreign students because they could prove to be a terrorism risk. Is that brush a little too broad, or is the administration right on point here?
Well, good afternoon, John. No, it's not too broad. But the situation we have at Harvard is this. Harvard seems dead set on discriminating against Jewish students. They are not engaging in any protections for Jewish students. So if they want to discriminate, they can, but the administration's not going to go away. Here, they've allowed violence on campus, some atrocious things to happen to students, a very hostile environment for them. And so if they want access to the foreign exchange program, they have to follow the rules. DHS administers those rules. They clearly don't want to follow those rules. And so the administration, the president, and DHS can deny them access. The ball's in their court.
Okay, so what about the students who maybe have already been admitted to Harvard or, have not arrived yet on campus? Where does this leave them?
That's up to Harvard. Harvard has to comply with the DHS rules. This is a special program. It's worked very well for this country in the past. But because Harvard is discriminating and placing students at risk, they have now placed all those students at risk. And so I would simply say again, John, this is something that is the inherent authority of the President of the United States. It is run by DHS, and it can be solved today if Harvard decides to stop discriminating against Jewish students.
Harvard is going to lose this case quite simply because Harvard does not control who has access to the United States of America. They educate people, but they don't have the right to determine who comes into this country. And that's really the argument. The drama is around, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all these students that have applied? Or what do we do with these students that are already here? And now the government's saying they have to be educated somewhere else. That's all the emotional drama. And unfortunately, it's happened because of Harvard. Harvard's actions have brought us to this point. But getting back to why Harvard is going to lose this argument, and it's simply because the government, the federal government, in this case, the president or Department of Homeland Security, has control over who has access to our country. That makes sense. Harvard does not have access or control to the access of this country by foreign students. They just don't. Harvard does not issue temporary visas for kids to be educated in the U.S. from whatever country they come from. Harvard does not simply say they have to come here because we've accepted them. Harvard may accept a student from a foreign country, but then they have to get a temporary visa, and Harvard does not issue those visas. So it seems like a rather clear-cut case, meaning the federal government, not Harvard, controls who has access to this country and therefore education in this country. But as I'm sure will be in so many cases that seem clear-cut but get rather convoluted, this one probably will too, and will probably ultimately end up in the Supreme Court. But at any rate, let me know down in the comments below what you think. My concern is most people are focused so much on the drama on how can we exclude these students from whatever countries, and not really looking at why the government's taken this step. And it's quite simply because of the violence perpetrated by individuals from foreign countries on campuses like Harvard. It goes beyond that. Harvard, as per Attorney Dershowitz, who has decades, many decades of teaching, educating at Harvard and associated with Harvard, has been very clear, stating that the faculty, the staff are preaching, they're teaching anti-Semitism. And that's why the government stepped in and said, listen, enough is enough. You're here to educate. You're not here to create problems on campus for Jewish students, which is exactly what's happening. And of course, it's spilling out beyond the campus. It's inciting violence against Jews. And we know that there were people who were murdered, just because you're Jewish, you have a target on your back. And by the way, going back to Alan Dershowitz, he's now been told that he has to hire private security because he's a high-profile Jewish person in this country who's speaking out against anti-Semitism. So that really gets back to the reality of the situation. Harvard is not doing its job. They're creating problems, safety problems for their own Jewish students, and it's spilling outside of the campus. and people are getting hurt. And in this unfortunate case, people are actually getting killed. That's why we're where we're at. That's why we have to focus on that specific issue. And that's why the federal government has said, Harvard, no more students from abroad. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, until next time, God bless. Love you all.